Hi, Helena. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, so we were just chatting before, and you were sharing a little bit of your story. You come from Mexico City.
Right.
Yeah, and so what was the inspiration to, I want to say, come to America, even though it's not too far. It's
Right. Well, I was born into a family of translators, so because of the language, we were always very close to the US and we would vacation in the US, so the US has always been near and dear to my heart. So when the opportunity came to go to college in the US, I took it.
okay, and it makes sense because if you're surrounded by translators, that seems to open up your world so
Absolutely.
much,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So you came to Texas first,
Right, exactly. To
and
Austin.
to Austin,
Hmm.
and for college.
Right.
And what did you get your degree in?
You will not believe it. History and Latin American studies.
Okay, and so then it's like, what do you do with that?
Exactly. What do you do with that? But in the, because I have always loved marketing, advertising, PR. So then I decided to get a minor in marketing. And then with that, by the time I graduated, I already had a job in PR. And so my life took me into this intertwined path of languages and marketing, promotions, sales, advertising, and so forth. So that's how my brain works. It works in marketing, in languages.
What do you love about PR? I'm just curious.
Well, here's what I love. Um, Getting a message across that resonates. That's what I love. When you see somebody's eyes light up because of what you just said, because the message really struck a chord, that's when I know that I've hit a home run with the
Okay,
message,
so
whatever that message is.
so how do you do that?
Oh, well, see, there's my passion because another thing that I love is psychology, how we all think and act. And it's just the human mind to me is something amazing and I love it. And I've studied it. I'm an avid reader. So every time I can get my hands on a book that talks about how we behave or why we do the things we do, that's, I just love to get my nose in that book.
Okay,
And
you're speaking my language now. Keep going.
yes, absolutely. And so because of that, I am able nowadays, as a copywriter, to be able to convey a message that is really on point, that really highlights whatever the call to action is. So it could be usually, it could be either increasing sales, growing a follower, a fellowship, I should say, or turning somebody into a thought leader in their space. It's just a matter of crafting the right message and the wording to be able to resonate with an audience.
Okay, so I'm going to keep asking the same
Oh, please
question.
do. Yeah.
So how do you actually do that? So is there a process that somebody can go through asking themselves questions? Is there a way to approach it in terms of the way to think about it? Like, what's your process like? How do you actually extract a message from somebody who feels like maybe they feel like they're all over the place or they're going in different directions and they want to talk about this, but they also want to talk about that? How do you really hone in to get to the core of the message?
Oh, okay. No, that's actually, it's a lot of digging and a lot of asking. Just like you're asking me, okay, what exactly is the process? I came up through really trial and error with an acronym that is actually very fitting, and the acronym is RIGHT. So the first thing that you do, the W stands for asking these questions, which all start with a W. So who, what, when, where, how. Excuse me. The how comes later, but specifically the why. So after you know who the person is, why they're doing what they're doing, what's their pain point, what's their story behind it, and most importantly, what's their why. That powerful reason that compels them to do what they want to do. Then you're getting ready to roll. But by rolling this, then we go to the R, which is the research, because it's not just who the person is, but then who is the target audience, right? So then you go into doing all of this research, and it's not just who the target audience is, but what are they thinking? What is the path that they're going through? What is their pain point, if any, or what is the problem that they're looking at solving? Right?
Right.
And then
That's key, I think.
absolutely,
And that's key in
absolutely.
sales, I think, is to
Right.
understand what are they thinking, because we obsess about problems, so it's like, what's the problem that they keep thinking?
Right. And there's a famous quote that says you have to enter the the you have to enter into the dialogue of the prospect's mind, into that dialogue that is already going there. Because I'm sure that you have, read something at some point that you've said, oh my God, this is almost like me, like they're reading my mind. How do they know that I'm feeling this? And that's exactly when you do your research and you know who your audience is, you are able to enter that dialogue right then and there. And that leads to establishing this rapport and this way of them getting to trust you, so that then you can move forward with providing whatever it is that you provide. And so anyway, that was the W and the R. And then the I just figured, let's call it an iceberg. And the reason why I call it an iceberg is because whenever you see something, an iceberg, you see just the tip. But what's beneath, and usually what's beneath the iceberg, is going to be the key differentiator to your message. And let me tell you just a quick story. For example, have you heard of Schlitz beer? I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Okay, no,
Schlitz
I'm not
beer.
familiar.
It is. My goodness, for what I understand, it's an old beer, but it's a very well-known anecdote in the copywriting world. That's why I want to relay it. There was this copywriter that was hired to write pieces, promotional pieces for this beer. And he went in, did his research, took a tour of the factory, and so on and so forth. And then he realized that the bottles were being steam cleaned not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. And he said, why do you do that? And they said, oh, that's the best way to sterilize them and to make sure that they are the purest for the beer, and so on and so forth. But everybody does it. And he said, but not everybody tells that. So he went on to tell the story as to how they even filtered the air so that the brew can get done without impurities. And by telling that story, those sales went through the roof. So that's what I mean by the eye in iceberg. Look at what's beneath. Look at what's the interesting angle, the story that will differentiate your product from everyone else.
Yeah.
And sometimes I find that people say, well, I really don't have anything different to say, or it's really not that special. And I just think they're lacking imagination, or they're lacking digging, because everybody has a story and everybody has an angle. And then moving on to the T in the acronym is really type away, meaning type, in the sense that once you've accumulated all this information that you need to do, the process is let your creative juices flow and let everything out in the paper. Just put it out however you want. Draw your charts, your your brain maps, anything and everything. And do not edit, because the creative process, the writing and the editing, are 2 different people in your mind. And the E stands for edit. So that at first, after you've done all this creative process, then you edit and edit and edit and edit. And sometimes it's not unheard of to edit a sales piece 20 times, so that you actually perfect it. And well, I shouldn't say perfect it, because I'm just like you, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I should use that word, but edit for excellence to the point that it becomes a piece that produces excellent results. And what you want will be, again, whatever it is, your call to action to increase the sales, or to get to know your product, or to ask for a demo, or for people to request a sample, or whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
So that's really the process in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a great process. And I'm just thinking about how it relates in other ways, right? Like I talk to a lot of people who are in transition, and maybe they're wanting to get a new job. And sometimes, they're thinking about it a certain way, but I often talk a lot about the cover letter. Because that's really their place to shine. And a lot of that, the process that you just explained in terms of their message, right? If they can even understand the company from that angle, right? And they can connect on that deeper level emotionally, and really extract more of like what's their why. And even maybe it could even come from what's the company's why and connecting through there, or it could come from them and what's their why and why they want to work there. Because that passion, I mean, I could see you totally light up.
Yeah.
It's powerful. The passion is powerful. And I think that can come your process can come through in many ways. And I'm thinking about, I'm actually writing a book this year, which is like
great.
a big,
Congratulations.
thank you. It's a big project, but you said a couple of things in there that I feel like I can apply to even writing this book, even just the process of just like letting it all out and then editing it. Because I think sometimes as a recovering perfectionist, you want to get it right. You want to get it right on the first try, and it's just not realistic,
Right.
And you got to just let it out, tell the story, get it out, and then edit for excellence.
Exactly. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, because actually in my notes, knowing that you are a coach, I thought, let me redo the acronym also for the process of creating or recreating yourself. As
I like this.
whenever you're soul searching and you're looking either for a new job, or you want just to change paths, or something happened in your life that you're saying, okay, I'm starting anew. How can we redo that? And so it came down to the same acronym, right? But the W, again, the who, what, when, where, and especially the why. The R is for the results. What are the results that you're looking to get with this? And again, still the research applies. The I is inquire about the iceberg and the opportunities that are there for you. But also the T is put together a team to help support you through this, and as you continue moving forward, because it's so important when you're transforming yourself into this new you, if you may. And then the E is execute for excellence. So once you make that decision, just be committed to it and move forward, run with it.
Yeah, I love that, because I think we have to constantly be reinventing ourselves.
Right.
You can't it's just not realistic to just be the same way forever. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. But I'm constantly inquiring, right? And that's part of what my job is too. And it's funny, in coach training, they teach you these W questions to ask a lot of who, what, when, where, and you mentioned also the how, right? So it's like, you can inquire with those questions as well, because questions guide focus and they lead you to answers. So it's really important, I think, to ask those questions. That's really cool that you thought about that.
Absolutely. No, I'm always fascinated, probably because I myself have had so many transformations, that I have this absolute love for self-development, and I've been devoting a lot of my time into that.
I can tell you're an avid reader.
Yes, definitely.
What's been like your favorite book or something that has
Oh my God, that's such a hard question. That's almost like asking what's your favorite child, right? It's like, oh no, I don't have just one. But if I were to say that I have a favorite, or I should say one of my favorites, let's see. There's this wonderful book by Benjamin Zander that is called The Art of Possibility.
Okay, tell me.
It is okay, let me just backtrack and tell you a little bit about him. Benjamin Zander is the conductor for the Boston Symphony. And so what he found out was that all of these musicians were striving for perfection because they had been taught that it was the way to go. But they rarely let their feelings come out as they were playing music. So he said, well, what about if we start enabling them to feel the music and to let them be the person that they want to become even more masterful musicians? And so he started doing this as a way of letting his musicians grow into this wonderful person that they need to be. And at the same time, it became this fantastic leadership and self-dev opportunity for them and for him, of course. So now he's known in these two spaces, but the book itself gives you a lot of different exercises, if you may, or examples as to how to manage either feelings or situations in a masterful way. So for instance, he has one that is called Give Yourself an A. And so he said that all of his students would come to class and they would just sit there. And he said, okay, so if you want an A in this class, you need to bring me back a paper that says something like, next year, by this time, I am going to get an A plus in this course because I will have done, and then list all of these things.
Wow.
It is
Brilliant.
fantastic. It is brilliant. It is absolutely
That's brilliant.
And so if you apply that to yourself and you say, okay, I am going to give myself an A plus, how does that change your view of yourself?
Yeah.
Because then you're striving to become that person that you just described, that you know you can become.
Yeah.
If you put in the work, if you put in the effort, if you put in all this commitment to do whatever it is that you want to do. So it's a fantastic way of fulfilling your goals. It's a fantastic way of seeing yourself in a different light, but it's also very positive in terms of growing yourself as a person. And it's also filled with humorous anecdotes. And anyway, it's
Yeah.
a highly,
That's
highly
a great
recommended book.
example. I mean, because within that there's envisioning, right?
Right.
And you start to see yourself, and then when you can see yourself become, well, if you first see it in your mind of who you are as an A plus, right? Like, what does that performance look like? Then you start to naturally go towards it because you have that impression.
Right.
I actually did that at the end of last month. I wrote all my wins and highlights for 2020 as if they had already happened.
Awesome.
Right? So I could see, and it's so amazing. I have a lot of experience with visualization, how you start to embody it almost naturally because you've placed your attention there already. So then you're like, oh, I think that already happened, and what's the difference between what's true and false is just, kind of how you think about it to some
Right.
extent, right? And I just want to share a story. My uncle's a jazz musician. He's won 3 Grammys, but
Awesome.
it's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that he had this really, I would say kind of critical father, tough father to some extent, and he was playing the accordion, and he asked his father at a very young age, he said, what if I make a mistake? Because we were talking about perfectionism. And he said, well, nobody will notice. And it gave him complete range and freedom to just play. And I think even as it relates to writing, I can see myself get into a state almost of like thinking about it rather than letting the feelings come through. And because I think when it comes to marketing and PR, we can get very in our heads and sales about that process without bringing our whole self into it. Or I'm speaking from my own experience, right? I don't know what your experience is when you're working with an individual or a company when they're like, it's almost hard to see ourselves. But if you bring that sense of feeling into it, like you were talking about, it seems like you can get the message more through.
You touched on a very important point because I've always said that the hardest copy, the hardest text to write for is yourself, is your own. Because the first thing that you have to do is sell yourself on yourself. And because we are so entrenched, we're so immersed into exactly what we want and all those feelings and how we want it to be perfect, and because we know so much about ourselves, that's the hardest part. But one of the things that helped me a lot, and I'll just share with you, is how you frame it. So the way one of my mentors told me is when you're writing, just write, especially those first drafts. Again, the first draft, he said, think of it, and I'm sorry for the language, but think of it as a vomit draft. The first one. It's not even a rough draft. It's a vomit draft. You are just pouring out there everything that's in your heart, your mind, your soul. Go for it. And you start from there. And it's so much easier to then start tweaking from there when you then don your editor's hat.
Yeah.
Because that way you have this enormous amount of information, ideas, angles that you can work with, as opposed to just trying to write in one particular way towards one particular outcome. By letting yourself be free in the creative process of writing initially, then you end up with so much material that you are lucky enough in that sense to be able to discard. So it's easier, imagine if you're sculpting something, it's easier if you start with a large rock, if you may, than with something tiny, because you do not have that much freedom of sculpting, whereas with something else you do have the ability to sculpt much more, and you can do away with more material to bring out something beautiful.
Yeah, I love that concept. I think it's very
It
freeing.
really is, isn't it?
You know, because I think that also relates across many boards again in terms of like if you're writing a cover letter, vomit it out. It could even be like you're journaling your feelings, right? Just vomit it out. You know, I think it's really helpful because I think sometimes we stop at the I don't know where to start or I don't know how to start, and just the starting in itself and just like okay, giving yourself permission to to have free range without putting any kind of barriers on yourself, and you get to work with it, like you said, a much bigger piece of art, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
Right, and then it's
Exactly.
easier from there. How do you distinguish also, like I think when it comes to the editing piece, it can be hard to know what to throw out,
Right.
so to speak. How does your mind differentiate?
Well, going back from editing for excellence, if you remember, go back up to the R. When you do your research, you're also setting your results. So, what is it that your goal is? What's going to be your call to action, or what does your client want? And based on that, that's how you're going to edit for that.
Okay, so you really want to look for the call to action.
Exactly.
And I read a lot of websites. I'm sure you do
Uh-huh.
too. And a lot of people are missing a call to action.
Right. Yes, that's crazy. If you only imagine nowadays when you have the privilege, the gift of somebody's eyes either stumbling upon or being referred to your site, you have just a matter of seconds to really grab them.
Yeah.
So if you grab them and then you continue to guide them down the page, why wouldn't you have a call to action?
Yeah.
Right? So don't ever, ever, ever miss that call to action, please.
Yeah, and even if it's a meeting, you want to understand at the end of the meeting, what do you want to know? What do you
Right.
want to do? Right? You want to understand what is your call to action. Is it maybe it's a follow-up meeting, right?
Right.
Maybe it's not like the end, but you want to understand what is that call to action. And I find a lot of people miss that. Like I'm very clear. My call to action is to get people to contact me. That's it.
Right.
So I make that front and center. But a lot of people don't.
Right. Well, sometimes what happens is that they think it is clear because it's clear to them in their mind, but it's not always that way. So one of the things that I always have on my checklist is a call to action, precisely because you want to make sure that it is in there indeed and that you do not miss it, but also that you are telling people what to do. Because sometimes, again, it's not always all that clear. You really need to tell them, and I'm not saying dumb it down or anything like that, but how many times have you gone to, I don't know, a video and they say, well, just, click to subscribe, and you're like, where is that button to click to subscribe? Because in your screen, in your computer screen, you see the button, but if you happen to see it on your mobile phone, you may not see it. So you have to be almost giving instructions as to how to do it. And if you say, well, click to subscribe and the button down here on your computer or on your phone, you may not see it, but just click here or touch the screen and it will appear. It's so much easier for people that way. So that way
Yeah.
you don't catch them off guard. And, you live, you learn, really.
That's
what
great though,
happens.
because I think it's an important communication tip, not just on like web copy and things like that, but I think it's also important in communication. Maybe it's with your partner or whatever it might be, is that we forget to go all the way through with communication because once again, like you said, we're clear in our head. But if you get really clear on the instructions of this is what I want it to look like and this is what it looks like, it makes it so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's brilliant. I love breaking it down into the clear instructions
Right.
because I
That's
do.
the easiest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I look. Sometimes I do it too. Like I'm just like, oh, click to subscribe rather than. But it does make a big difference. I felt my brain turn around when you were like, go here, and you click the button below is that you're actually walking somebody through the process mentally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ask me how I know. Exactly. No, really, you live, you learn. And that is how you eventually stumble upon these tiny little things that can leverage whatever results you want, because you think, okay, let me go and analyze what they're doing or what they are not doing. Um, there was this one time in which somebody changed the ink. I believe it was in one of the, or changed the ink color. Instead of having, your regular coupon in the magazine or whatever it was, with a white background and lettering, and black lettering, they changed it around. And the problem is that because it was still black lettering and just the box was black, nobody could read anything.
Right.
So it's just little things like that that perhaps a graphic designer may not think about it at the time, but someone that is looking specifically for the call to action will find it. So the way that happened is that nobody got a reply on that, and they said, okay, so what happened? And so they analyzed it, and that's what happened. So the point of all this is we all do, and we all make those mistakes. So there's nothing to be afraid of. It's simply a matter of, if you know in advance, or if you can think of setting these instructions, fantastic. And if not, if something is not working, just go back and go through the process as if you were the prospect or the client, and then you'll find out exactly what's not working.
Yeah, I've done that myself. Then I'm like, oh, now I see.
Yeah.
You got to do a couple run throughs, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You can't expect yourself to get it right the first time.
Or you can ask somebody as well, a friend or someone who is not as immersed in the process, to do it for you.
Yeah.
And then to give you feedback. Well, this wasn't clear, or this is not really something that I understand, or so forth. And speaking of that, I would like, if you let me, to just give your audience a little gift, and that is a checklist with all of these little steps. So when they're producing their content, they can just check the boxes and say, oh, okay, yes, I do have these steps covered. Because another thing that is important is precisely to go through the list and realize, okay, what am I doing? What is this for? What are the results that I'm expecting to get? And that's the way also in which you will know if it's working or not.
What are some of your favorite call to action words?
Oh, okay. The call to action always, always, always starts with powerful verbs and with action verbs. So I would suggest, don't ever start a call to action with, if you would like, please go ahead and subscribe, or feel free to, no, always say, click here to subscribe, or buy now. So all these action verbs, use them, because that's what really snaps your brain out of the lull of reading and puts you or your prospect into action mode. So the clearer and the more imperative you make it, the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And parlaying off of that, words in general that are some of your favorites personally when it comes to copywriting. Like, what do you have, like, words that you use repeatedly?
Yes, I'll tell you my favorite. And I won't tell you the word, but I will run you through it. Imagine if you could get your prospects to do anything that you ask them to. The word imagine, and that's my favorite, sends the reader into this journey with you, and then you can take them into whatever land you want them to go on to. So you can tell them, imagine yourself reaching your best weight. Imagine yourself at the side of this majestic pool with the mountains in the background. So that imagine sends our mind into wherever you want them to go. It really is fantastic. So that's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, it's amazing how immediate it is. Like, even when you're talking about it, like it's like the thing where you say, like, okay, don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink
What's
elephant.
the first thing that appears in your mind? Oh my God.
Yeah, so, like, it's amazing how powerful we are and the power of words.
Yeah.
And I even, language is so important when I study it in terms of when I'm coaching someone, I'm always listening to the words that they're using to describe a situation or to talk about themselves or whatever it might be, because the way the words that they use to describe is what's creating their reality, and how we have the power to create a different reality through, even if we do it ourselves. Like, okay, imagine myself at an A plus. Like, what does that
Right.
look like?
What does
Right?
that
Like,
look like?
it immediately sends you down a different pathway of thinking.
Yeah.
So I love that. Do you have anything else? I love
Oh
the
my
imagine.
goodness. Yes. Well, the one that you said, don't do this. It immediately sends you into somewhat of a little bit, let's just call it alert mode. Don't do what? And
Oh.
then it depends on whether it's don't think about the pink elephant, or don't even think of going there, because that means like, oh. What,
Oh, yeah,
that-
your mind perks up. Like,
Exactly.
okay, I'm going to be aware of that.
Exactly,
Whoa, that's a little
exactly.
bit of reverse psychology there. I think.
Exactly, exactly. But it's so important to know that too.
Yeah.
Some other ones that I love, whenever you are telling them exactly what they are going to get out of, the takeaways from whatever you're doing, or what they're going to get, the product. If you just tell them, discover blah, 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 that's almost like imagine. So discover the benefits of drinking rose tea in the morning with its aromatic beauty, blah, blah, blah. So something like that. Or how to blah, blah, blah. That immediately gives you, like, right between the eyes, this is what you're getting. The how to on 1, 2, 3. Let's see which other ones. Well, something else that I love is piquing people's curiosity. So whenever you have this ... and so much more, you're like, oh my God, don't leave me like this. Tell me what else. And I don't know about you, but sometimes whenever I'm reading a piece, if it's really good, I want to know more. And sometimes I sign up or buy the thing just because of that, and so much more. Because I'm thinking, if they're giving me all of this great information right now, what else is in this book, or what else is in this course that I'm going to learn?
Yeah, okay. Do you think reading has helped you
Oh my
become a better
goodness.
writer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that
I
all
don't read,
writers should
though.
be. Oh, well, let me tell you something. Can I can I make a quick commercial?
I mean, I listen to
Yeah.
books.
Oh, it's the same thing.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course, of course. As long as you're feeding your mind in whatever medium, whether it's
Okay.
the printed word, the recorded word, however it is that you want to feed your mind, as long as you keep that dynamic flow of information coming to you, I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe I could add a little bit more reading.
Oh, if you want, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I am also a big audiobook
Okay.
consumer. And
Yeah.
I love my audiobooks.
Yeah,
Because
me
they can
too.
go with me everywhere. Whereas with reading, I just need to be sitting down.
Yeah. Yeah, and have less distractions
Right.
around. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what's the best advice you've ever been given?
That is a great question. And it's hard to think of just one piece of advice. But I would say, you know how people say, love thy neighbor like yourself? I would say turn it around and love yourself like you love your neighbor. And I'll tell you why. Because for perfectionists like me, I am incredibly nice, supportive, helpful, resourceful to other people, but not to me, because I was very hard on myself. And the language that I would use with myself is language that, holy cow, I would never ever use on anybody. And I realized that as a perfectionist, I was just scared of this panel of invisible judges casting judgment on me and saying that I was not good enough, and not until I realized that if I truly loved myself and truly treated myself the way I treated other people, life would be so much better and I would be able to do so much more, because perfectionism is just fear.
I love the panel of invisible judges too, because you don't think of it like that. You think of it as like actually there.
Right, but who's there, right? Who's telling
There-
you
yeah.
that? Nobody. It's just in your head.
That's awesome.
We are. Somebody was just waving out there, so I
Okay.
think we're out of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, so we'll just wrap up. Tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Thank you so much. Well, I am Helena at helenaescalante.com, or Helena at entregurus.com, ENTREGURUS.com, and that is my blog, where I blog about ideas from the best business books that you can read in under 5 minutes. So that's like a quick read. And what I will do is give you the link to the download for your audience so that you can add it to the show notes.
Okay,
but if they
great.
go to Entregurus, they will find it there.
Okay, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you so much.